I'm Tracey Keevan, for those of you who don't know me. I'm the editorial director at Union Square Kids. And with me today is celebrated children's book author and illustrator Mo Willems.
Hello.
Mo, by way of introduction, I thought maybe we could talk some numbers. Well, I'll talk the numbers. You can just listen and be wowed.
Okay.
65 plus books for kids.
Wow!
40 New York Times bestsellers.
No way!
26 foreign language translations.
Sacre bleu!
7 musical adaptations.
Whoa!
6 Emmy Awards.
How was
5 Geisel Honors and 2 Geisel Medals.
it?
4 licensed theater productions.
Yeah, that's not right. Yeah.
3 animated series.
Ooh.
2 HBO Max specials.
Oh.
And 1 Pigeon.
What are we talking about?
It's just written here. I don't know.
Okay.
But let's just talk about you now.
Sounds like somebody cool.
So yes, Mo, those are your numbers. Mo by the numbers. They're very
Wow.
impressive. I think, I work with you on a regular basis and sometimes I forget how impressive those numbers are. So thank you for reminding me with your very candid reactions to all of the numbers.
Thank you. That's very exciting. I like those numbers.
They're good numbers. So back to that one pigeon.
Yes.
That one pigeon has 8 picture books, 7 that are currently out,
Right.
and 1 that is coming out. The one that is coming out is called The Pigeon Will Ride the Roller Coaster. And that is coming out this fall.
Very
From, believe
exciting.
it or not, Union Square Kids.
Very exciting. It is going to be an emotional roller coaster about roller coasters.
It is. When you name the book, The Pigeon Will Ride the Roller Coaster, you were very deliberate with the word will.
Yeah.
Can you tell us why?
Sure. All of the Pigeon books have this action behind them. Don't let finds, wants, needs a bath. The most recent Pigeon book before this was The Pigeon Has to Go to School. So they're all about these sort of larger philosophical questions. So if you look at The Pigeon Needs a Bath, it's not as much about bathing as it is about what are these needs? What do I need to do, and why do I fight against things that I really should be doing? And so here, the pigeon has no choice, but is excited, right? It's anticipatory. I will do this thing. And if we've learned anything over the last 2 years, it is that making plans is a fool's errand.
Yes, that is true. This is somewhat related, or pretty closely related, but you've said to me, and you've said it in interviews, a story is a question you don't know the answer to.
Right.
I think the will is part of that, what is this story about? But I think there's more there too, in terms of pigeon over time. And pigeon changing over time. I'm wondering if you can talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the pigeon, much to its chagrin, has grown a little bit. It's no longer the bundle of fury that it was 20 years ago. And I do think that a book is sometimes a letter to yourself that you want somebody else to buy. And it is always a question you don't have the answer to. And I think just on a larger philosophical level, this is a book about making plans and then adapting to realities. And I don't think I have the answer to that, but it seems like a persistent question that all of us are dealing with. And if I'm dealing with it, certainly a kid is dealing with it, and they're dealing with it in a much more serious and deep way. And so I want to be able to express the joys and the apprehension and the excitement and the surprise and sometimes the resignation that comes with planning in a way that, maybe a kid could say, like, yeah, I see myself in that pigeon, or I see how that pigeon isn't quite reacting the way that I would, or that one should, maybe.
Thank you. When, related to that kid and how they're reacting to the book, you think a lot about kids when you're writing and illustrating, and about their part in this production of a book. Can you
Right.
explain that a little bit further?
Well, certainly it's a dialogue, and I only make 49% of the book. It's a piece of sculpture, and it isn't alive until it's being reacted to. So any reaction is fine. If a kid yells no to a book, that's great. If a kid says, "Oh, I love this book," it's great. If a kid is bored, then that's an honest reaction. So I think of each book as a work of sculpture. The first thing I'm thinking about is, what is its size? How is it going to fit on a kid's lap? Or when a teacher holds it up, how well can it be seen? Is it a book that needs to be read on a lap? Is it a book that can be read from a big distance? What is the size and the shape of the book telling us? Usually a long horizontal book is about a place, because that's how you take pictures when you go to a place. And usually a tall book is about a character, because that's how you take pictures of people when they're on their own. But here it's a square book. It's sort of saying there's something unusual going on. So even before the kid has opened up the book, I'm hoping to set a stage of expectations and participation within the context of that. And then even the end papers are telling us something about what that adventure is going to be. So we haven't even gotten to the title page. We've already had all these little stories happen to our audience.
Mm-hmm. Talking to a room full of virtual publishing professionals, you've been very open about book as book, in terms of book as a physical object for kids. You're just talking about your kids' reaction to it. Can you talk a little bit more about the importance of just physically holding a book for a kid versus
Right.
reading on a digital platform or some other medium? Like, what is it about book as book that you feel is important?
Well, obviously it's tactile, and you have more control over a physical book. You can decide to turn the page and then stop and go back. You touch it, you feel it, all of that stuff. The book is there for you. It is a friend waiting for you. And again, the size and the color really matter. I made a book more than 15 years ago called Leonardo the Terrible Monster. And it's about a small monster, but we never say that the monster is small. We just made the book very, very large. You imagine it on a kid's lap, it's a little unwieldy, maybe even. And that's sort of the point of it. I really do believe that a book can be a child's friend, and sometimes the physical book can be the child's only friend in that moment. Certainly, studies have shown how important it is to have a physical book in one's house for anyone's later development as a human being, to see themselves, to see others, to participate all in this object that is also shareable and revisitable. When you come back to a book, you've read that same physical thing, you've been in that same space so many times, it gets a veneer of humanity, maybe even, in a way that a screen never could.
Yeah, no, it's so true. I mean, when I love a book, I physically want to hug it.
Yeah.
I think there's something very emotional that happens and between the reader and the book.
I love that. I mean, we just did a performance at the Kennedy Center with the National Symphony Orchestra, and kids are dressed up in their finery. They're going to the big concert hall, and a lot of kids brought stuffed animals, which is great. And a lot of kids brought their books from home. They wanted to experience this symphonic story with the book that they read at home. It's an important object.
Yep, it is. Speaking of the Kennedy Center, so I wanted to talk a little bit more, or actually a lot more, about what you're doing outside of book publishing, because you are doing a tremendous amount. You're the first ever education artist in residence at the Kennedy Center. It's a big title. Got it out
Right.
there.
Jacqueline Woodson is currently the education artist in residence. So excited to see some of the stuff that she is doing. I just saw a dance piece that she worked on that was really incredible. But yes, I'm very lucky to be able to play in all these other sandboxes. I have written some opera, I've done some symphonic pieces, I've written some plays, I'm working on some television, a rock opera based on a musical that is based on one of my books. We're doing interactive exhibits, and they're all coming from my books. That really is the place, is the garden for all of these other ideas to exist. So the Opposites Abstract exhibit will encourage kids and adults, and sometimes very old people with very young people, to work together and explore opposition and art and abstraction. The symphonic works hopefully will inspire kids to see that their stories are worth being told in this large cooperative venue. You know, a symphony is 80 people working together on the same project. The television stuff hopefully will have kids running up and down and dancing and interacting with the screen. But again, it all comes from the book. And the book is always, no matter what book it is, it's always interactive. Because the second you stop using it, it stops working.
In creating art and creating entertainment for kids in multiple spaces, right, which is what you're doing, what is the sort of thread that connects them all beyond the book, but, you know, just sort of you as an artist, you as someone who's creating entertainment for kids, what connects all those pieces?
Well, you know, my credo is always think of your audience and never think for your audience. So I am very aware of what my work is going to do and how it will be not received, but how it will be projected in one way or another. I think that everything that I do has a controlling idea, has a point to it, and hopefully that point is a question. So, for instance, the rock opera, animated rock opera that we're doing for Naked Mole Rat Gets Dressed at HBO Max, that question is why not? And it's not a coming out story, it's an accepting in story. It's a question of how much do we need to inconvenience ourselves to make people feel whole? And how hard can that be? So I feel like, I don't know, I guess when I was a kid, my dream was to draw and be funny. And I hope that my stuff does that. But I think on a larger scale, everything that I do, I want it to be a spark to the next step. You know, there are 3 acts in any piece of art, any experience. And the first act is the buy-in. You decide to watch a video with Tracey, Keevan, and me and see us talking. You pressed a button to do that. And the second act is the experience, the book, the story, the movie. And the third act is how it changes you, how it sparks you, what it engenders in the audience. So is that spark going to be everybody's going to go home and draw a pigeon? Is that spark going to be kids are going to start having fashion shows? Is that spark going to be I could write an opera, I could sing about how I feel? Whatever that is, I'm more interested in what happens after the show is over, after this interview is over, than I am in the actual act itself, if that makes any sense.
It does. I think I would add what I'm always really impressed by is a real sense of respect that you have for your audience. It really comes through in your books and, you know, in your shows and your theatrical productions. You don't talk down to kids at all. You talk with
they're not. Yeah, there's no reason to. They're not dumber than we are. I mean, it turns out that we as grown-ups share 99.9% of our DNA with kids. It's a scientific fact. And the only difference between them and us is they're new here. They just got to the party, right? Mm-hmm. So they don't know where the bathroom is. They don't know where the keg is. They don't know whether they should, you know, try the crudité. But besides that, they're us. They're settling in. And I think I learned so much more from the questions that come from kids because they're born philosophers um, than I do in other places. So I want to definitely be respectful of that. If somebody says, well, you can't put that big word in it because a kid doesn't know it, the answer is, well, they don't know it yet. But after you've done it, then they know it. And now they got this big word. That's pretty exciting.
Yeah, it's true. And you really do. You trust kids to come along and come along for the ride. Which brings me back to roller coasters. Wow.
Very good.
Working it. So, speaking of roller coasters, you've done so much in your career outside of books and, with books. I'm going to bring the two together on this roller coaster ride, and you're going up that creaky first hill before you drop. I have this feeling like, what have I done? I call it the what have I done feeling.
Right.
I'm wondering if in your career, you have something pops to mind of like a what have I done moment as you're going up, besides this interview.
Well, the first thing that came to mind was this interview. So, no, I feel that I love being terrified. And so one of the keys to the sort of things that I've done is when people have said, well, can you do that? I've said yes, and then I've tried to figure it out. So the first play I ever wrote, the Knuffle Bunny, a Cautionary Musical, they just wanted to license it. And I was like, oh, no, I'll write it. And they said, do you know how to write a play? And I said, yes, I know how to write a play. But that excitement and that terror sort of keeps me going on some level. Lately, what has been the most exciting for me is to be collaborating, to be in a room with people who are just really great at what they do, And if you are the best in the room, the smartest in the room, you're in the wrong room. So I'm constantly now looking for these rooms where I can work with actors or writers or illustrators that bring so much to the table. I want to see how they create. I want to learn from them about their process because everybody has a different process. And ultimately, when a work is good, you forget who made it. And then, ironically, at the same time, this is an opposite, you feel so much of that person, that individuality, There's so many projects that I've done where at the end I've been that performer or that animator or that writer has just been themselves. And that's why the work is successful.
Good answer. So you're terrified going up.
I am terrified going up.
I have to segue back because there's a part 2 to this question.
Okay.
You're back on the roller coaster.
All right.
You've just gone over the top and you're going down.
Right.
And it's that feeling of this is amazing and also terrifying, but amazing. And
right.
It's the joy of the ride. And kind of the same question, is there a moment that comes to you of like, this is I'm coming down the roller coaster. This is an amazing moment that I want to remember forever that encapsulates everything you've been doing in your whole life. It's a simple question, Mo.
I wish I was better at enjoying the ride, but I will say there have been a couple times in my life where I have met a kid or a grown-up, but often it's a kid who will just say, the first book I ever read was something that you wrote. Mm-hmm. And that is super powerful to me because I remember the first book that I read and I remember the freedom that came with that. So that really is the greatest joy because I think sometimes when you're making stuff, I'm in my studio and I don't think of it in the real world.
Switching gears a little, still the roller coaster metaphor somehow. When we went into this pandemic, you said during one of the lunch doodles, I believe, and also in other conversations that, science is going to get us out of this and art is going to get us through this.
Yeah.
As you look back over the last couple of years, how has that played out in your life, and how have you seen that play out in the lives of kids?
Well, certainly, I started painting a lot more abstractions because I wanted to see things that were continuous. Color and form and shape are always there, and all that matters is what we do with them, what we have control over. I don't think, I mean, the world is a terrible place right now, but I do think that a lot of people got back in touch with the empathy that comes from creating. Because drawing is a physicalized form of empathy. When you draw, you are thinking about who you're drawing or what you're drawing. If you're drawing a building, you're thinking about, ooh, that's a tall building. It's got a lot of windows. If you're drawing a character, like, well, what are they wearing and why are they doing that and who are they? It's physicalized empathy. And I think that the idea of grown-ups in particular drawing with kids and being empathetic and sharing their drawings together is a very, very powerful thing. And for myself, I know that when things are grim, drawing, painting, working it out really gives me the space to get in contact with the essence of what I want to be, who I want to be, and how I want to be that.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I mean, you inspired me to do a lot of just basic doodling. And, when you go out to lunch with Mo doodles on the table. Doesn't matter if you're supposed to or not. Mo does that. And, it took me a long time to kind of come around to that because you have that sense of feling self-conscious as an adult doing that kind of,
There's no
play.
such thing as a wrong drawing. And I feel like if certainly the first HBO special was for the parents to give them a shamectomy, to just let it loose. Like, if the worst thing that can happen is that your doodle isn't ideal, you're showing your kids that you're imperfect in some way. But there's also this great exploration. My father-in-law was a businessman, and every night at dinner, we put out butcher block paper and we draw during dinner. In the beginning, he did not want to do that. And then he just started drawing spreadsheets, right? And then they started growing into abstractions. And then he started saying, like, well, I want to go to a museum to see how people put color together because I like the way colors look when they're juxtaposed to each other. And then these spreadsheets became these crazy ribbons of color. I mean, it's an incredible journey that now this guy looks forward to dinner, looks forward to drawing, looks forward to find a way to express himself, and just for all of us to get lost in conversation while we draw.
Mm-hmm. Last question.
Great.
In the publishing industry, over time, the past 20 years, you've been working in book publishing, and longer, you've been in kids media. With that, in that position, all of us publishing professionals, there's a certain amount of responsibility in the types of books that we publish, the type of entertainment that we put out. And there's always something more that we can be doing, right?
Yeah.
From your perspective, your thoughts, where should we be going? What are the places that books need to be pushing the boundaries further?
That's a really interesting question. I mean, I think that obviously trying to get a variety of voices out there is very important. I think trying to collaborate with different voices is important. I would really love to see established artists and unestablished artists working together or finding different ways to communicate. When we did Because with Amber Wren, that was Amber's first book. And I think I learned so much from the way that she approached the book as an animator. And there were all these sort of things that I assumed, having been in books for so long, that were different from the way that she presented them. It was a really great experience. The other thing that I would say is there was, I feel, a spirit when I started in books that allowed me to be in books. And that spirit said that unusual was not pejorative. And I sometimes fear that we're no longer embracing that we're in the search for hits. We're losing out on the weirdness. We're losing out on the eccentric stuff. And whatever that voice is, and there have been many, it's not that there haven't been really interesting stuff out there, but there is a voice out there that's just weird, that is waiting to connect to kids in an electric way that nobody expected. So I really would hope that unusual stops being a pejorative and becomes a compliment.
Perfect. Those are all my questions. Is there anything you'd like to add?
Tracey, I would like to thank you for the work that you've done and the insights that you've had. And what I love about an editorial relationship is it is collaborative. And you're always pushing me and the other artists that we work with to do better, to think about it, and ultimately to be more authentic. And I want to thank all editors, because that's a somewhat selfless job to say, I want to help you be the best that you can be and step out of the way and also be a nudge and know when to do that. It's a tricky dance. And I really appreciate that. As I'm getting older, appreciate more and more the people around me who help me focus whatever meager talents I have in a way that can maybe do some good in this world. So thank you for your work, and thank you for being such a nudge.
It's what I do.
It's who you are. You see, it's authenticity.
Thank you, Mo.